Welcome to the Bucher and Friends podcast, co-starring 10-year NFL veteran and Super Bowl champion, Will Blackman.
Manning from the end zone. He throws, and a deflect away, and it is picked off by Will Blackman, the former Giant.
Tim Dwight watches it hit, bounces, picks it up at the 10, slips a defender, fumbles the football, it's up for grabs, it's covered in the end zone by Will Blackman for a Green Bay touchdown!
And now, here is your host,
Let's send it over to Ric Bucher.
Ric Bucher.
Welcome to another episode of Bucher and Blackman, subsidiary of Bucher and Friends, part of the United WeCast Network. I'm Ric Bucher. You can see me on FS1. You can read me on Bleacher Report, and you can follow me on Twitter at Ric Bucher. He is Will Blackman. You can also find him on FS1. You can, at least on an occasion, you can follow him on Twitter at Will Blackman, and you can attend a camp somewhere where he's going to drop his knowledge on you.
And you can find me back on Instagram.
And you can find him on Instagram, ttoo. You're back on Instagram. And is that the simple at Will Blackman, or is it
simple at Will Blackman?
Beautiful.
I was still able to get it.
And is there news behind you being back on Instagram? I don't remember you going off of Instagram. Or
I haven't been on it in a long time.
Okay. What inspired you to get off?
You know what? I'm just a spontaneous type of person.
So you just spontaneously got off, and now you're spontaneously getting back on.
I wanted the people to miss me.
And the people have spoken?
That's what happens when you get a third child. No one spoke. I was like, I'm over it.
Just no one cares. I'm going back anyway.
You want to leave? Go ahead, buddy. Go do what you got to
do. Beautiful. Well, you brought up something that it just coincides with something that I had a long conversation with an NBA assistant coach about, which is training, medical staffs, strength and conditioning coaches, the whole physical aspect, and how it's been it's gained hyper attention with teams and with players in particular. And you brought up the idea of trainers, some of whom I know who work in the league, and they kind of advertise the work that they do, particularly if they work with superstar players. And I also know some guys who work with superstar players that don't advertise themselves. And so it was a subject you kind of brought up as something that you wanted to talk about. And I'm ready and willing, because I do think it's an interesting aspect of where the modern game has gone in terms of having individual guys who work with individual players.
Yeah, I mean, my thing is I'm the biggest supporter of guys who are training people, training players, especially at the high school level, because I think all this training is essentially keeping these kids out of trouble. You know, because growing up, I never gone to a facility. I was always outside playing, which kept me out of trouble. So now these guys are getting great information, great feedback. They're training with pros. They're training with college guys, speaking about the high school kids. And now, these trainers are being able to help train professional guys. Right. And I'm all, like, once again, I'm a supporter of promoting it because it sells. I have a buddy here who I went to school with. He lives in California, and he's trained Mary J. Blige, he's trained Jake Gyllenhaal, he's trained Lou Scola, he trained the whole Argentina basketball team. His name is Antonio Valverde, and you can find him on Instagram, Antonio Performance. And he's the type where he's kind of too chill, doesn't want to say anything.
Yes.
Almost like I respect the privacy.
Yep.
But I'm like, there's a way to go about it, because at the end of the day, it is a service, it is sales. You want to show people what you have been doing.
Sure.
So obviously, I would say you can say that you've done it, post whatever, maybe get a testimonial from the person,
right?
Which is like a huge validation. But sometimes there's people where they're like, okay, this guy is like this because he worked with me,
right?
Because because he did this. When I trained before the combine, I mean, we had a bunch of guys show up who were already running 4.3s,
right?
That's what they did. Right. You might have adjusted. Maybe you try to get them to run a 4.2, but if they were in a 4.3, it's not because they were at your place, they always ran a 4.3. You know,
Right.
so I kind of came up with this method of, I guess, each level of training. I feel like high school kids, when you train high school kids, it's more so like coordination, help them be more athletic, you know, in that regard. When you get to college, when you train college players, it's more so, okay, let's get them faster, let's get them stronger, let's you know, raise their IQ a little more. And then when you're training professional guys,
Yeah.
speaking more so for football, you know, they just want to get in shape. You want to get them in shape.
So it actually works in reverse. You're actually doing more work, more refined work at the lower levels than you are with the pros. The pros is basically, I just need to get you to where you can do what you're capable of doing.
Yeah,
High school and college, it's more you're teaching them how to do some things.
Right. Now, certain positions, it depends, because like if you're playing basketball, you can always work on your shot. It's a technical thing. Same thing for being a quarterback. Quarterbacks, you know, that's something you can constantly work on, is throwing. But a receiver, you can always catch the ball. I feel like receiver, you either have hands or you don't.
Right. Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You can work on your hands, but you're either a natural catcher or you're not. You know, and also too, when you get to the pros, it's more so about heightening your IQ, because everyone is super fast, everyone is super strong.
Right.
Now, so I like Ryan Clark is training guys, and he has a company called DB Precision, and I'm a huge fan of what he does, because when he's training his pro guys, yeah, they're getting all the good defensive back work and all the cool drills, but he is also raising their IQ. He's putting videos out there where he's actually teaching X's and O's, because he was a successful safety himself, and that's where I'm like, okay, see, that's the difference.
I would think that with receivers, that teaching, I mean, you do have the hands, but you can teach footwork and you can teach balance.
Yeah, no,
and you can
exactly.
teach and you can teach your eyes, like how to pick up things quicker, things like that. I would think that go beyond, and to a certain extent, I think you still have to have a natural ability to be able to play at the highest levels. I mean, you have to have good feet. You have to have good balance, right?
No, yeah, because not to get taken out of context, you are 100% right and all that. But let's say, because I train defensive backs myself. Okay. Now, say if I'm training guys and Patrick Peterson hits me up and wants to work with me.
Right.
It's like Patrick Peterson is already like off the charts, just athletic. You know, if I help him with anything, it'll just give him more like, hey, I play safety, so I give him a safety perspective of X's and O's or what certain things are to help him out there. You know, I trained a kid actually this offseason, this combine, Sean Bunting out of Central Michigan. He went second round to the Bucks.
We've talked about him before, I think, on the podcast.
Yeah, he went second round to the Bucks, and he was, I mean, off the charts athletic. I'm like, okay, I can do drills with him all day long. You know, it's not really going to benefit him, so let me just tell him the things that certain coaches will look for. And then we went straight to the classroom, and I just helped him just mentally get ready. Like, here's certain things you want to look for. Here's certain things that they do. We went straight more. We did more heavy classroom work than we did field work. Yeah, with him.
Right.
So I'm not going to sit. And so when he went and killed all the drills, killed all the combine stuff, and I got reports from GMs and scouts saying he was, man, he looked great, blah, blah, blah. And I'm not taking credit for his athletic ability. I didn't do that. That's him.
Right.
I made it give him like certain things to look for that's going to actually help him be more consistent. But I don't know, man. It's interesting to me.
It's funny because when you talk about this whole industry, the first guy I think of is Tim Grover, whose claim to fame was he was Michael Jordan's guy. And he parlayed that into a business after the fact, in training with guys and training a variety of guys. Now, since then, I feel as if it's become a whole industry. And Tim wrote a book, and Tim's been very much
he capitalized already.
Yes, he did. There's another guy who works currently with a lot of guys who's at the other end of the spectrum, Rob McClanahan, who...
Rob!
You know him.
High school. He went to my high school.
Okay. he's worked with the best of the best.
Right.
And I've talked to him at times, and I think I've even done a podcast with him once upon a time. But he's very clear on. He always talks about the clients. Like,
right.
This is what I do with them, but he does it, and he talks about it in a way that it puts the light on them. And Damian Lillard is another guy I think has worked with a guy as assistant coach. I think they first met at Weber State, I want to say. A guy named Phil Beckner. And same thing with Phil when he talked about Damian. But it was all about, these are the things that I put him through, and he was showing up the next day, or he was doing this and whatever, and was never, this is what I did, right? And as a result, Damian is who he is. I've never gotten that from those guys. He
had D Rose also. That was like his one of the main guys.
Rob, yeah. He had Rose
and Kevin Durant,
and Russ Westbrook. I mean, Russ and I was in Santa Monica. I was in the little Santa Monica high school gym when D Rose and Russ Westbrook would be going at each other, and the Lopez twins would be going at each other at the other end and kicking chairs and throwing things when one of them would win or lose, and then the older brother would take the one that was acting up too much and like put him up against the wall. The Lopez twins were worth watching work out all by themselves. It was theater for sure. So this is the thing you would be able to address this. Because I've had this conversation, and actually there's a NBA trainer who has worked with my son, and try to make this as brief as possible. We were in Vegas, and my son wanted to get up shots, and the trainer called me and said, So I called him and I said, hey, do you know where there's a gym? My son wants to get up some shots while we're here. And he said, let me check. And so then I got a call one night, and he says, does your son still want to get up shots? And I said, yeah. And he said, okay, we're going to be at the track at 7 a.m. tomorrow. Because before we go shoot, we're going to work out. and it really, to me, that's tremendous. We're not going to just take you to a gym where you get to shoot. It's like, we're going to see how committed you are. You're going to show up at a track at 7 a.m. in Vegas, then I know that my finding a gym for you and my time with you in the gym is worth it. So my son gets out there, and they run quarters. They have to run a sub 6 mile to warm up, and he's holding his own. In fact, the trainer even goes, is your
sub 6 mile to warm up?
Yeah, how about that? But it was Vegas. It was Vegas too. We had to do 2 sub 6. We had to do 2 miles in under 12. First day of training camp for soccer in college, and you basically couldn't practice unless you passed that. That was the thing. And what the worst part for me was, like, if I'm running with somebody, I can do that fairly comfortably. If I've got to do it all by myself, it was the hardest thing in the world to train for that.
Dude, I did repeat 200 Saturday morning, but I had a bunch of friends with me. So that made it easier because I had people with me. We push each other.
Right. So, finish the story. When he took my son into the gym, he was showing him, and he's worked with a lot of guys. He was basically showing him, even if you don't have pure blow by speed, you can play angles where all you need is a quick step, and if you know how to play angles, you can get the same advantage on a defender. Basically,
100%.
You can turn that, right?
100%.
And that was the question I had for you, whether that still applies in football, that if you know how to play angles, you can compensate. You don't have to be the fastest guy out there.
Right.
If you know how to play angles, you can make yourself a lot faster.
Right, and you know what? That helped. When I moved to receiver after playing defensive back for 3 years, I knew every way how to gain an advantage. Especially playing receiver in the ACC, I went against a defensive back every week who ran a 4.3 or a 4.2. 4.3 minimum. I had a guy who I lined up against looked at me before the snap and said, I run a 4.3, right? That's a I forget, we were playing Maryland, and he looked me right in the face before the snap, and he was like, I run a 4.3, right? I was like, what? I looked at Matt Ryan, and I was like, dude, check fade. Let's go. Let's go.
Yeah.
So my thing was, all these guys I was 6'1", so I wouldn't say taller, but taller than most DBs. Right. And so I knew if a DB wanted to play press, I'd win 10 out of 10 times. Because all I had to do was make them adjust a little bit at the line and stack them, which means I get right in front of them and they are stuck behind me. So now they have to work. Exactly. Now they got to work around you. Yeah, we have to work extra hard to get around me, and now I can run any route I want.
Yes.
I would immediately go for the stack. And so it was done deal. So I'm like, please press me.
Right.
Because I know what to do.
Right. Because now it's a matter of it's more a little bit of hand fighting, right? You're just trying to throw them a little bit of off balance so you get that step around them or past them so that now they're on your back.
Yeah, so exactly. So once I get them on my back, now it's like they're in a disadvantage because I had Matt Ryan. He threw a dime every time, so he could just throw it over my shoulder, and I had long arms, so they had no chance of getting the football. So to your point, a lot of these DBs all DBs were faster than me, and I ran a 4.4, but these guys were track guys,
lightning. Yeah. But you see the same thing now in basketball all the time. In the pick and roll situations, Fred VanVleet is the first guy that I think of. And Steve Nash was great at this, was the first guy that I saw who did this really well. And it was the same thing. Andre Miller, I could go down the line of guys that did this who weren't necessarily fast, but they would get the screen and they would get the guy on their hip, and then they'd work their way in front of him so that now the guy defending them is on their back, and they'd slow down and then speed up so that they're breaking toward the basket, and the defender now has to wait until they make that move because otherwise they're going to run them right up their back.
It's almost more difficult to guard guys who weren't that fast.
Yeah,
because they actually paid attention to those angles.
Right.
Where if I had a guy who was blazing speed, I'm like, okay, I got to take away one route. And that's the go route.
Right. Because that's what he's looking for.
That's what he's looking for.
Yeah. It's interesting to me how guys that have that because this was always the thing for me. If you have the blazing speed and then you combine that with the discipline of having the footwork, then you would be unstoppable. You'd have both. And it just seems to me a lot of guys who have that great speed just get comfortable. I think Russ Westbrook, to me, is the basketball demonstration of that. Like, he's been able to go by guys or just stop on a dime and pull up. And so the little intricacies of everything else, he hasn't had the same need to develop those to the same level. He's much smarter basketball player than people give him credit for.
Right.
But there's some nuances that I see other guys have that I just think, man, if Russ had those combined with his physical skills, he would be unstoppable. And I think maybe that's why people have been critical in ways, because they see the physical ability and the other part of it just hasn't come along at the same level.
Even if he won, MVP and all that stuff.
Yeah, look, for me, it's a matter of when he won MVP, and he won MVP largely because of the triple-double, largely because of the energy with which he plays, the relentlessness with which he plays, but because of the position that he plays, and because he has the ball in his hands as much as he does.
Right. Yep.
To me, it's a matter of you can't just be good. You have to make other guys good. And I think that he does to a certain extent, but not to the level that we see some other guards that make the game easy for other guys. LeBron, and it's funny, LeBron is similar in that LeBron plays really well with smart veteran players. But that's because that allows him to do what he wants to do, and they can play off of him, as opposed to how good can he make a Kyle Kuzma and a Josh Hart and an Alonzo Ball who don't have that same level of IQ. Like, how can I find my way to making the game easy for them? That's where, and we're talking like PhD level basketball here and being able to do that. But to me, that's an element that Russ has never fully developed, and that LeBron could win with anybody for sure. Could he win a championship with anybody? Certainly, I don't think so at this point in his career. Maybe at some point earlier. But
I feel like in sports, it's always situational. Like it has to be like right place, right time, right system, right setting. Mm-hmm. It's not. I feel like a player can't just go there and walk into a situation where he's like, okay, this looks good, I'm going to get this done. Right. That's not happening.
He's gonna elevate the entire thing, regardless of who's there. You're right.
When Peyton Manning went to the Broncos, he brought all his people. Like, okay, this is what I need around me from preparation wise to be right.
But that's also, you look at the point in which Peyton was in his career. Then he needed that more than ever. It's interesting you say that.
Yeah, but he still broke every record. For sure.
But that actually parallel works for me with LeBron. I think there were the variables around him and what he could be successful with. I think there was a wider range 5 years ago, 6 years ago than there was now. Like now, I think he has to have certain things just to be competitive. He needs shooters around him. He needs high IQ guys. He needs defenders around him because he's not going to be expending a whole lot of energy at that end of the floor. So I think that's apt when it comes to Peyton. But speaking of new guns, I've just seen glimpses, and I want to start here because we're kind of into training camp now, and the NFL Network and ESPN and various places are doing their training camp tours, and I don't know how much to make of what we see in training camp. As someone who's been in training camps, and I don't know how much. First of all, when you're in training camp, how much do you see of the coverage of training camp? Are you guys watching anything on TV to see how your team is being covered?
Well, it's on all day, every day in the facilities anyway. So
you can't miss it.
Yeah, you can't miss it. It's on the locker rooms, on the training room, it's on in the equipment room, it's on in the play development room, it's on in the lunch room, it's everywhere.
And how often are guys watching it thinking either there's a misrepresentation, the accuracy of what you're seeing and what is being said. How accurate is it based on what is actually going on?
I think most guys, when they watch it, though, they just want to see what certain guys look like. So, say like the draft picks, what do those guys look like? If there were some huge free agent signings, what did like right now? You see Odell's everywhere.
Right.
Guys want to see like what's he doing. What does he look like on his new team? New head coaches. Just you want to see what's going on, what happened different. Most especially if it's in your division.
Right.
So I think in terms of like all the details that's going on, all the whatever you want to call it, I can't speak for everybody, but the majority, the majority aren't really
paying attention.
Now, if you have someone on your team that's holding out.
Yeah.
And like the story of what's going on, that's where it's interesting. Because you might hear stuff like, oh, this guy does that, this guy does that. And then, you may just have lunch with the dude. And I'm like, that's not really what's going on. When I was in Green Bay, I remember Nick Collins was holding out, to get paid safeties on the Packers.
Well, isn't it? There's a lineman with the Washington Redskins right now.
Yeah, Trent Williams.
Yeah, who's holding out.
I don't know if apparently he's not holding out. Apparently he just doesn't want to be there.
Yes, that's. I saw that report, and I saw you respond to that on Twitter with the eyeballs.
Because there's always something going on
with the Washington Redskins.
Yeah, it's like that's. I mean, Trent Williams is he is probably the most talented left tackle in the game, but since I've been there, he has been banged up.
Right.
And I know he's like frustrated, like, damn, dude, like what do I got to do? Like, what's up? Why can't I stay healthy? And in his case, the way it's looking like in the reports, why can't they help me stay healthy?
Yeah.
Because every year it is something. It is something, tragic. And he is easily one of the toughest guys I've been around because I seen him with some horrible injuries, and he had to be out there though.
Were you ever conscious of a rift between the coaching staff and the medical staff?
Conscious of a rift?
Yeah, like there was just where you got the sense that there was a rub between the two. And the reason I bring this up is because I had a conversation with an NBA assistant coach, and we were talking about the whole, rest and keeping guys, not overworking guys has become a big emphasis in the NBA. And he feels, and I get the sense, I've heard rumblings of this from other coaches, that coaches in the NBA feel like this has been taken way too far. And it's because the investment in the medical staffs, in the training staffs, in the strength and conditioning, the facilities, everything has been, there's been a great emphasis on the health of the players, which certainly is a good idea. But that as a result, the medical staffs have more authority than the coaching staffs do. And they're like, that's fine for guys who are 30s or guys who are dealing with injuries. But now we have this thing where we got 24 and 25-year-olds that we can't practice hard because we have to be conscious of the wear and tear. And they're like, we can't get our jobs done. And these guys, there's at least a theory among coaches, some coaches, that one of the reasons that guys are getting hurt is because they're not conditioned to play. That there's too much there's too much rest. There's too much. We're either training, we're either conditioning, or we're playing, and there's not enough actual practice that trains guys to play the game.
I would say that especially nowadays, I want to say maybe the past 8 years, guys have been on the same page as the head coach. For example, let's take the Seahawks, right? Pete Carroll, he's extremely player friendly. Like, everything is about the players. Like, to make sure, for example, the equipment manager Eric Kennedy has no budget. It's like, what do they need? Get whatever they want. Pete Carroll has a mental performance coach. He has a director of health performance, and right. Sam Ramsden. And Sam, Sam and Pete and John would talk. He's like, hey, this is how hard the guys are working. Maybe we should back off today. Because at the end of the day, everyone needs to be healthy.
Right. Guys
are going to get in shape. So they're gonna work, like, especially in Seattle, those dudes work hard. It was hands down one of the hardest practices.
Well, see, that was going to be my other question, which is just how much of a variation is there from team to team when it comes to the way they practice? Like, if the Seahawks practice hard, if that's the way Pete approaches things, knowing that he pushes hard, then I could see where he's going to, and as long as he knows it's kind of, he's the one who's making the ultimate decisions. The rub here is when coaches are being told by the medical staff what they can do, as opposed to having a plan and then listening to the medical staff when the medical staff says, hey, you might want to take a day light, right?
Yeah, and they're always on the same page. The funniest thing for me was when I was in New York, and I was always everyone's, especially when you're young, you're always afraid to let the head coach know, like, oh, I'm not feeling well, I can't practice today. Like, you don't want to say that, especially I was brought up where, hey, you're tough, you got to go and deal with it. So in New York, I had Coach Coughlin, and I was like, man, my knee's not feeling right. I don't want to say anything to him. So the head trainer over there was Ronnie Barnes, and Ronnie's like, don't worry about it. I'll tell Coughlin. I'm like, really? He goes, yeah. He's like, trust me, I'll tell him. I'll tell him you're not practicing today, and for him to leave you alone. and it's funny because then you see Coughlin, wander in there, always thinking. He's like, hey, what's up with Will? He's like, well, his knee's not feeling well today, so he's not practicing.
And that was it.
That was it. And he couldn't say anything about it. You hire the medical team because you trust that they're gonna do everything they do to make sure everyone's healthy. Because that's how it is. You have to be healthy. When the Panthers went to the Super Bowl, I mean, they were a talented team, but the one thing that people never mention is that team was extremely healthy. They had everybody. The
last couple of NBA championships, we've seen them determined. Yeah, this last Super Bowl. Todd Gurley is not Todd Gurley. How much of this of a difference does that make?
Right, same thing. The NBA Finals. I mean,
that's kind of what got me going on this whole conversation on training and the influence that medical staffs have and how you come to making decisions on a guy like Kevin Durant and having him play.
And excuse me, Ronnie Barnes is the senior vice president of medical services. He is not just the head.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
there you go.
Because I'm like Ronnie's bigger than that, man. Ronnie is bigger than that. He's the man.
Did you ever have to go see a coach? Because we talked about like not wanting to go into the training room because that wasn't always a positive. Most coaches are going to look at it and it's going to be a ding on you, right?
Well, yeah. Well, especially once I left New York, and it was hard for me to get a job. Yeah. Because everyone was concerned with my health.
I got you.
The next job I got, I was staying the hell away from that training room.
Right.
What are you getting? Aspirin? I was like, no, I'm getting a cotton ball. I was really getting aspirin.
Really? You were just getting aspirin?
Yeah, I mean that's all you can get. That's available. You can't just walk in and grab the good stuff.
Okay, I was just because I caught a little bit. Bill Simmons had Kevin Costner on and was talking to him about one of the
watch Yellowstone,
the movies that he did. What?
Watch Yellowstone?
Did I watch Yellowstone?
Did you?
No, I can't say that I did.
No, it's a TV show, so you definitely have not been watching.
I have not been watching Yellowstone. Is Costner in it?
He's the head guy.
What is it about? I've never even heard of Yellowstone.
Oh my goodness.
What's it on? Is it HBO? Is it Netflix? What is it?
It's on like Paramount or something like that. I don't know. You can find it though.
I guess I'm gonna.
It's actually pretty good. It's like I think it's the number one show right now on TV.
I'm still catching up on Narcos right now.
Are you really? I tried. It's like someone's either there's a relation or someone's dying.
Yeah. Well, we just watched.
I was tired of seeing all the love scenes. I'm like, come on, man. Like.
Yeah. We just watched an episode where a guy was pulled apart. He had each limb tied to a rope that was tied to a motorcycle, and they went in 4 different directions. And my daughter was like, "What happened? Tell me what happened. I would play it back, whatever." And we're like, "No, you're gonna have nightmares if we play this for you."
Yeah, look it up though. It's on Paramount.
I will check that out. All right, you know what? That does it for this episode of Bucher and Blackman. It's good to catch up with you again. We missed last week because I think you were on the road. You were going someplace, or no? You had to do radio.
Yeah,
that was it. And so since we're on a truncated schedule right now, when we miss our window, we miss our window. So it's good to catch up with you again. In the next episode, I'm continuing my Bucher Friendless run of talking about stories from Oracle Arena, what is now the Warriors' old home, and the experiences I had there covering the team and the league and a little bit of how it shaped me as a reporter going forward. And so we're going to get into the meat of the Latrell Sprewell, Byron Houston battle, and a number of other things that happened in that building. PJ Carlissimo and Spree. Spree's kind of in the center of a few things that happened there that were notable. And then hopefully, if this is just part 3 and we don't need a part 4, I can get into when I came back and I was actually a sideline reporter for the Warriors for a couple of years when Mark Jackson came in. So get into all that in the next podcast. Don't forget, we appreciate all of you who are rating the show. You continue to do that leaps and bounds. If you want us to do something for you, screenshot that review and then send it to @BucherFriends, and you'll be eligible to win some prizes. So, in the meantime, for Will and myself, as always, thanks for listening.